I'm Danny Epperson at the esteemed Commodore Dinner Theater in downtown Portsmouth. Thanks for joining me for WHRO Cinema 15. Get ready for a military love story about chasing your dreams, fighting for what you want, and never giving up. It's An Officer and a Gentleman. 1982 was a banner year for Hollywood blockbusters. Moviegoers flocked to E.T., Poltergeist, and Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Those big-budget spectacles ruled the summer box office. But one late summer release became an unlikely hit and swept audiences off their feet without a single special effect. An Officer and a Gentleman was a gritty love story about overcoming obstacles and defeating one's insecurities. Even without aliens, ghosts, or starships, it became the third highest grossing film that year. Richard Gere plays Zach Mayo, a troubled loner who wants to become a pilot. The only thing standing in his way is 13 grueling weeks of training at Naval Aviation Officer Candidate School. While there, he faces off against Sergeant Foley, a hardcore drill instructor played by Gosset Jr., who seems determined to break Zach's spirit.
I got nowhere else to go!
Things get even more complicated and a bit steamy when Zach meets Paula. Debra Winger plays the local factory worker who wants to marry her way out of town. It's hard to imagine anyone but Gere, Winger, and Gosset starring in this movie, but none of them were director Taylor Hackford's first choice. Zach was offered to John Travolta, Jeff Bridges, and even John Denver. Sigourney Weaver and Angelica Houston were offered the role of Paula. Jennifer Jason Leigh actually accepted the part but dropped out to make Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Both Jack Nicholson and Mandy Patinkin were considered for Sergeant Foley. All three actors in this movie gave career-defining and award-worthy performances, but only one took home an Oscar and also made history. Gosset's win for Best Actor in a Supporting Role was the first ever Oscar in that category won by an African American. It was also the first Oscar for an African American in any acting category since Sidney Poitier took Best Actor in 1963. I'll be back after the movie with a deeper look behind the scenes, but for now, hit the lights and let's enlist in An Officer and a Gentleman.
Every day.
How about that storybook ending? Now, during filming, Richard Gere was worried that that final scene was too sentimental and would never work, but they shot it anyway. The extras were so swept up in the romance of the moment that they actually cheered and cried. And then once the right song was added in, Gere said that scene even gave him chills. That final song, Up Where We Belong, was as much of an unpredictable hit as the film. Producers Michael Eisner and Don Simpson hated the song, said that it would never become a hit, and didn't want it in the movie. But the love song by Joe Cocker and Jennifer Warnes was right where it belonged. And that was with Zach as he lifted up Paula and off into the sunset. The song hit #1 on the Billboard charts and took home a Grammy, a Golden Globe, and an Academy Award. Even though An Officer and a Gentleman is considered one of the great cinematic love stories of all time, behind the scenes it wasn't exactly a match made in heaven. Gere and Winger were like oil and water, and the two kept their distance when the cameras weren't rolling. Director Taylor Hackford wanted that kind of tension between Gere and Gosset on the screen. He isolated Gosset throughout the production, keeping him in separate living quarters. As the cruel drill instructor, he had to physically and mentally humiliate Gere, and Hackford didn't want them bonding and building a friendship that might influence their performances. But there's a happy ending to Gere and Gosset's story. The two actors developed a friendly relationship after filming, one that continues to this day. I'm Danny Epperson, and I will see you next week for WHRO Cinema 15 and another classic movie.